Hi, I'm Xero.
I'm Dan, and welcome to our podcast,
where we're talking to real people about real problems in real situations.
So grab a cuppa while we talk founder life.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Founder Life. Today we are chatting with Darren Glanville, who is the country manager for Fathom in the UK and EMEA. We talked quite a bit about his approach to leadership, how he's kind of overseen the evolution of the accountancy world. We touched on how he has learned from his mistakes and built resilience around that, and also touched on his coaching journey as well. So let's get into the episode. Hi Darren, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi Cheryl, hi Dan, it's lovely to be here.
Thank you for coming.
Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about your journey from your career and how you've... Oh, I can't even get my words out now. Right, we have to start that again. Sorry.
Right.
Oh, God. Welcome, Darren. Lovely to have you here.
It's great to be here, Cheryl and Dan.
Thank you.
Cool. Cool. Could you start off just by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your journey to where you are today with Fathom?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Darren Glanville. I'm the country manager for UK and EMEA at Fathom. Many people may know me from the industry itself. I've been around in the accounting tech space for more than 20 years. My journey started not in software. That's the kind of irony of this. My journey started many years ago in a sales role, working in an engineering company. And at the time, a lot of the stuff we were doing, we talk about CRM these days, and it's kind of, it always makes me smile when we have technology that's really empowering us to do more and be more efficient. And I often look back. I'm going to set a scene for you here that if you've ever watched an episode of Life on Mars or Ashes to Ashes, and you see that environment where you've got middle-aged men in suits with ties down here, flared trousers, sitting at desks with their boots on the desk, their shoes on the desk, telephone in one hand, cigarette in the other. That's the environment that I first started working in. And my first job was in sales, and I didn't have a CRM system. I was given a telephone on my first day at my desk, and I was given a Yellow Pages. And I was told, this is what we do as a company. These are our customers. These are the areas of the Yellow Pages you need to look at. Go ahead and do it. And that's where I started. Everything was manual. Order books were manual. We were writing orders down. We were taking orders into the factory at the time. They were being put onto these manual little T cards that we used to have, and everything was visual, and you physically had to move jobs. We call it a Kanban board today, but those jobs were being moved around manually. And because I was as probably the youngest person there, the MD at the time said, "Oh, we need to probably automate more of this and think about computerization." This is back in the 80s. And it was like, you're young, you get this computer stuff. You can take responsibility for it. And we did, and we met and we spoke with a company that specialized in the vertical market that we were in. And we put together a software package, and we used it for many, many years. And then I moved from that company. I wanted to challenge myself more with sales. So I moved into recruitment. And I remember sitting there one day, and this opportunity came for a programmer. And I thought, I know, I'll ring the guys that developed the software for us. They were having generally quite a high throughput of staff. They would train people up on certain programming languages at the time. So I rang the MD of that company and said, "Hey, Alex, I'm looking for a programmer." And he said, "Well, I'm looking for an account manager. Do you fancy coming to work for us?" And that's how I switched from recruitment into selling software and computers at the time. And we were selling, so we joined them, and we started selling what is now effectively, I suppose you would call it, like Sage X3. It was a product that was built around Tetra at the time, and mostly used in big ERP, finance, distribution, and manufacturing systems. 16,000, 32,000 pounds a time for the software and hardware. I think one of the most expensive servers ever sold was about $250,000. And I don't remember we sold this piece of a kit, and Hewlett Packard was the server, and we sold it to this company on the basis that it would be installed by specialist stair moving equipment. to get up this very narrow flight of stairs into the server room. And so, come the day of the installation, the specialist stair climbing equipment turned up, and it was two guys in flat caps and a sack truck, and they handboarded up these stairs out of breath to get it into the server room. But it was sold to us that we would get this specialist stair climbing equipment, and two guys in a flat cap and a sack truck turned up to do it. And from there, I started working more and more with big accounting firms around there. Enterprise customers, and I just started getting attracted to that. And I ended up working with Solution 6, which was my first real foray into that. And then I moved from Solution 6 into Sage to CCH. And I love working with that. But we were selling, tax return software and practice management software. And once you've kind of done that, there wasn't really an awful lot left to do. And I was always about the transformation pieces. How can we help you do that? And from a back office procedure, if you're billing from a timesheet and doing accounts and tax returns as accountants do, there was always that element of the client side. And I came across this little product called Xero that was just really fledgling in the UK. And I saw it. I thought that's where I want to go. And really saw the opportunity. Joined Xero, had many happy years there. But always looked at the transition from how the cloud was enabling firms and businesses to connect together, have that centralized data. From an accountant's point of view, what they could do with that extra time, because they weren't chasing paperwork, they weren't chasing backups, etc. And what more could we do? And so I always had this thing that advisory was the big piece. And I think I've said this to you before, Cheryl. I was fortunate to see a paper by the ICAW called The Profitable and Sustainable Practice. It's going back to 2003 when I saw it. But it said then the firm of the future will derive 60 to 70% of its income from what they call type 2 services or more client advisory services. And that's a very broad spectrum. But that just literally blew my mind. And I thought, how can we help practices do that? How do we get them on the trajectory? And cloud software, I think, was the vehicle to do that. And I still believe that now with tools like Fathom and other applications. It's APIs have transformed what we do. And so being part of the team at Fathom now, I feel very blessed with the team that we have. We're really about helping firms like yours, Cheryl, deliver more of the advice that clients truly need. They may not see that right now, but it's absolutely the stuff that's going to keep their businesses growing, weathering financial uncertainty right now. And so that's how I've arrived at my journey, and that's still my passion. But yeah, so from a humble beginning as a salesperson right the way through to now heading a team.
Yes. That's a really interesting journey. And you have seen literally the evolution of the accounting industry and been a big part of it.
Yeah. So for me, I remember being the witness of self-assessment coming in as well. And the change that made. I mean, everything before then was paper-based, or you did it, essentially via the portals. But 97 self-assessment came in. We saw the rise of lots of systems to help accountants do that. But to be it, just to see that happen, and then to witness that second evolution of cloud software come through, the rise of tools like Xero and others, the explosion then of the ecosystems and all the add-ons that go with that really turn those GL products into much richer tools and a much richer experience for that. And bringing, I suppose, enterprise-grade software down to the small business level. That's really been a pleasure to work with. And being part of the journey of those companies in terms of their growth and their next step has been really a privilege. And we're doing the same thing with Fathom.
It's exciting, isn't it? And so what, obviously you said that you got involved in Xero is kind of what sparked your interest in terms of the accounting software. What is it that, was it literally just that initial conversation with that, when that phone call came along, or we come be account manager that made you want to change, or was it?
No, it's for anyone who knows me, I've always been passionate about, adding value to a relationship. So whether you're selling, I still believe this. I think it doesn't matter what you're selling, whether you're selling a GL product, you're selling time and recording software, you're selling inventory software. What you're always looking to do is add value. And what I've always strived to do is really give those customers I've grown with and we've developed, what's the next stage of your evolution? And I believe that we have a duty of care if we're partnering with someone to bring the best of knowledge to that customer. Now, that may just simply be a conversation that we've had with somebody else. Obviously, we're not sharing competitive information, but we are saying, hey, these guys have done this. Have you thought about that?
Yeah.
It can just spark a little bit of interest. And everyone who knows me knows that I've often introduced other firms. And I think there's a phenomenon that's certainly happened over the last 10 years, which I think has been more around collaboration rather than competition. And people being willing to share their story, their journey, why they chose that path and the pitfalls to avoid. And I think all we've done is really play on that and introduce people who are like-minded together so they can build their businesses and share those experiences. So I really believe in that. So I think it's for us and anyone who's an account manager, I think that's fundamentally what you're doing. You may not get the sale today, but you're creating a value proposition to really build upon that. And I think because you understand, you can go into a lot more depth with those customers as well. And you end up having quite strategic conversations. And I remember working with one particular person. Cheryl knows Stephen very well. He was a partner at a much bigger firm. There was some things happening in his life. But together we sat down and said, where do you want to go for this? So we ended up being almost a coach for that embryonic practice and helping them solidify what they wanted to do, how they were going to do it, how they were going to start that practice, and how they were going to grow. And so when you kind of see the other side of that 5 years down the line, and they've grown and they're on the way to £500,000 practice, £1 million practice, there's an enormous sense of pride. And I love being at a part of this central hub of connecting people. And I know that, in fact, I can just say, hey, Cheryl, you need to speak to this guy, and this guy needs to speak to you. Are you okay with that? That's what I love about it.
No, and you can see that.
Got some visitors. Where did that? Okay.
Try again.
Where do you think that came from?
I think part of it was all about when I transitioned. When I was selling, first of all, you move from a kind of that hunter role into more of a farmer, and so you start to get a natural understanding, and you want to dig further into your customers so that you can better serve them. I think it comes back to be understood. First, we have to understand, drivers' motivations and everything else. If I'm truly going to help somebody, I'm nosy, I'm curious, I'm not afraid to ask sometimes tough questions in order for me to help that customer better. I think it comes from that. And I moved, when I moved into the IT role from the engineering company, I moved into a pre-sales position. So my role as a pre-sales consultant was really digging into the minutiae of why did you do that? What's the impact of you doing that or not doing that? So that I could then configure the system to best serve that customer. And I think I've just carried that on. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable doing that. The thing about Xero was when I joined Xero, I really felt that I couldn't add more value to a firm around their tax returns because it's legislative. You have to show them, you have to do it in a certain way. You have to submit them by a certain date. It's filling boxes in. Outside of someone recording a timesheet, they may bill slightly differently. They may write more off some than others, but you're not really changing the client side. So the part for me was, how do we make that client-facing role more efficient? How can you provide, because if customers are seeing it, you can offer them more services than the traditional year-end tax return and accounts. And businesses have always wanted that. They still want that advice. They need it now more than ever. And I think we just saw the beginnings of that when Xero first came into the UK. and saw how that could change that relationship. So for me, it was an absolute no-brainer to have that conversation. And when we joined, there were only literally a handful of people in the UK, all working from home, no office. We were knocking on doors, kicking down chairs and tables to get people to come into events. It was fun, but we were selling a transformation, I believe, from what the status quo was to where those firms could be. And lots of firms like Cheryl's jumped on that journey very early. They became very early adopters, and now we've seen the impact that has had for them in their growth. So that for me is really fulfilling. And I think it's the same now. It's one of the reasons why I left Xero. I was very happy at Xero, but I felt that once I'd worked with a partner to get their customers on, if Cheryl's got all of her customers on that, it's naturally ingrained. How else can I add value? Yeah. Now it's okay. Let's start looking at how we can help you serve more customers or provide more services to them, and that's what's driven me to where I am now.
And do you find that really kind of brings up and instokes loyalty in people?
Absolutely, I think it promotes trust first and foremost, and I think that's hugely important, especially now with the vast amount of systems that are out there. Is people trust you. There is loyalty with that, and it's not just about walking. I have had it, however, where people have said, I've joined a new company, and people go, "Oh, what are you coming in to sell me now?" And I'm like, "I'm not selling you anything. I'm really not selling you anything. I just want to have a conversation. If we end up doing a business as a result of that conversation, that's different. But I'm not selling you anything. I'm just curious as to how you feel about it." And then we've ended up talking about that. And I think that's you have to strike a very hard balance. Obviously, businesses need to grow, but there's a balance between sort of knocking on people's doors and making them feel like a number, and all you're doing is saying, "Hey, how many new customers can you add to the system? How can I add value?" The rest will follow.
Definitely. And one thing that I feel as a Fathom customer is that your whole team is on my side, and no one is ever trying to sell to me. They're just, how can we help? How can we help you with this? How can we help you with that? And I love the fact that that's ingrained in your whole team. So how is that something that's happened naturally? Is that something that you've really worked hard on? How have you managed to get that feel for the whole of the company?
I think it's fundamentally it's part of the DNA of the business. We've never been that. We want to help our clients scale, obviously. So you need to measure that, and we want to stretch our customers as well. We don't want to just sit at the status quo. But I think you can do that in a way that really significantly embodies that symbiotic relationship. Having honest, transparent discussions. That for Fathom, that's really key. And the team are great at that, and they never want to see themselves as pushy, but they will stretch customers and push you forward to scale. Because if we can help you provide advice to your clients, you're doing what you became an accountant to do, is to help people. We want you to get the right fee for that service that you're providing. And we want that to be ingrained. And nobody wants a customer to churn, as we call it, to cancel and move off or lose a customer. So all of those play a really integral part to what we do. And Fathom as a company has always seen, compound, solid growth as a real positive. And I think, we've seen this with other SaaS vendors. We've seen them chase the hockey stick growth. We see them hire lots of people. We see them then have to retrench that because they're running out of runway. And runway, I think, for a lot of businesses, sadly, is going to be the key word over 2023. But Fathom's always just focused on that solid growth, month-on-month growth. We've hired exceptionally well. We have people who understand the market. We've had people who've worked in industry, worked as accountants. They're your people. They're your tribe. And I think that's the key thing. And that's underpinned everything we did. And, making sure you're on the right price point. We never want our customers to pay more than they should be. The last thing we want is for someone to commit to a plan that they're hardly using. So let's always make sure you're on the right price point. We'll help you upgrade as you need to, but let's just help you with that. We'll help train you. We'll come up with ideas. And hopefully what we've also done is embedded that. How do I add value to you? What other conversations am I having with other people? That these are the key learnings. So that's good for me to hear. But I think that's just representative of everyone across Fathom as an organisation.
It is. You just feel the support. And obviously we work with many SaaS companies, and obviously I love Fathom and you and your team. But that's one of the reasons why we love you, is because you just feel like you're there on our side and helping us. And that's what we do for our clients. And it's what I think personally more businesses need to do for their clients, especially when you're in that sort of relationship market. You may think you're selling a product, but you're not just selling a product. You're selling, like earlier with the transformation, you're selling businesses to help them to grow. And I think a lot of people can learn from Fathom and from what you've done.
I think we said this at Xero as well. I think for us, what's important for us is it's almost like we don't want to be there. We want to be part of what you're doing, but we're supporting you to deliver this service to your clients that's going to help them make better decisions, understand their numbers much more clearly, and hopefully weather anything that's thrown at them. And certainly we've had enough of that over the past 3 years. So how do we put them on the right footing? We're almost taking a back seat. So the key thing for us is we wouldn't necessarily ever want you to sell us as a subscription. We want you to wrap your services around us. And that's the key point. And we did that at Xero. And I think that was the most important thing. And that's why we saw the scale that we did. And that's why we saw the growth that we did. And I think there's an interesting juxtaposition. And firms, you've done this exceptionally well, Cheryl, is business owners are commercial. If you had a scale, a 2x2 matrix, if you had financial literacy on one axis and you had commerciality on the other, small business owners are high on commerciality, but they're low on financial literacy, as a generalization. Accountants are the antithesis of that. They're high on financial literacy, but a lot of the time they're actually low on the commercial.
Yeah.
So it's how you mesh those two diagonals together. Not everyone's that way, but what Pink Pig have done really well is you've meshed that. And you're bringing the expertise that you have and the commerciality together. And that's why it's working so well for you guys.
Yeah, I think I've always been a case of where I've worked in a business, I know what it's like to be on the other foot. And I pretty much was in a business doing it before I qualified as an accountant. So I've probably had a reverse journey to a lot of accountants. So I've been able to bring that in. And also I've always just worked on what would I want if I was them? Because at the end of the day, as accountants that run our own businesses, we run businesses as well. So we are business owners. So we need to treat our businesses like business owners, not just from the accountant's perspective, which I think is where a lot of accountants need the help with. And the fact that you then go around and connect those people together as well, which I've seen you do at so many events, and you're like, oh, you need to come and speak to this person, or you come and get me, can you speak to this person? And I think that's one of the things I love about our little bubble.
Yeah.
And I was brought up in my first accountancy role was like a very traditional role. And it was like, oh no, we don't talk to them. No, we don't do that. And then being thrown into this world, I'm just like, wow. And I talk to friends and I'm like, other business owners, I'm like, well, do you not have this? And they're like, no. And they're missing a trick, really.
Absolutely. There's so much you can learn together. And I think that's interesting about leadership as well, is you don't have all the answers. And that for me, that was one of the biggest learnings is moving into leadership. Even though you can be a great salesperson, you can be a great account manager, you can be a great pre-sales person, no one prepares you for it. No one kind of takes you through that and gives you a handbook that says, here's everything you're gonna have to deal with. And we don't have all the answers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think you and I learned that, and that was a tough lesson coming out of that, because you're good at your job, you move into leadership, and yeah, it's different. You're not trying to make people into you. You really need to help them become the best versions of themselves, and that's the lesson I learned very early on. Was taking that, and yeah, no one's going to approach the call in the same way that you do. No one's going to handle the account the same way that you do. But how do you help them be the best version of themselves? And that's the bit. And we don't have all the answers.
No, I'm writing that down because it's such a good phrase.
It's very true, isn't it? It's very, very true. The interesting, so, you know, obviously a lot of the success that Fathom has had and the growth moving on is, and Cheryl spoke very, very highly of the staff and dealing with. You said there about making, helping them be the best version of them. How do you try and do that? How do you try and bring the best out of your team?
Again, I think it's in any leadership. The key thing here is to try and be is communication. And that's easier said than done sometimes. I think that's the other way of looking at it. Because we don't have all the answers, and I think there's a natural ability in us as leaders to try and have the answers all the times, and that's not possible. So listening to them very intently, understand where you've got key strengths. What are the key strengths? And look at what roles they're doing that really play on those key strengths. I think is the most important thing. But we also need to nurture that. And I think one of the things that you come in and you transition into is you're almost in this role of playing a father figure, a mentor, a coach. You're husbanding everyone around and trying to do that. And so, yeah, we don't always get it right. And I think the other thing is be human. Have a little bit of humility about that. Yeah, I think too many people try and be too perfect. I've certainly been guilty of that in the past, is trying to be too perfect around that, and recognize that you're going to have off days, but be vulnerable with the team and let them know that, and work with them on this. We shouldn't be the smartest person in the room, and I think you've probably heard that as well, but I really do believe that. I think one of our key strengths as leaders is recognizing where other people have those strengths and playing to them. And yeah, you're not always going to get it right, but be human, be humble about it. Otherwise, as I said to my boss, you get humbled very, very quickly.
Yeah, definitely do. No, I think I started off thinking that I had to be that person. But as I've gone on my journey, I've realised that actually I'm not that person and I don't need to be. No. It's definitely not needing to be. And you build a team with all the things that I can't do, or not my strengths.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing for me, is recognising where those strengths lie. You'll always have people who know product better than you. You'll always have people who know marketing better than you. Don't let that go. Recognise what you can control, what you can't control, and let it go. And as I say, sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. But all we can do, is I think, as any leader and individual, is be better tomorrow than we were today, and what we were yesterday. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I think too many leaders don't show enough humility.
No, definitely not.
No, but they're also the types of companies are a little bit disjointed. They probably have high staff turnover and things like that. If you went and spoke to every individual staff, they probably have no idea what the company's trying to achieve and the journey it's going on and what, all rowing in the same direction. They don't tend to get very far very quickly, or if they do, they get found out very quickly. So
yeah, I think there's, I think one thing that's really come to light is, certainly over the last 4 years, 3-4 years with the pandemic, there's just so much going on. in everyone's lives. We're trying to balance so much right now: kids, work, dogs, as you we're trying to balance all of that, and it's still at the end of the day, lead teams, sell to customers. I think just give ourselves a little bit of a breathing space. Just slow it down. We're not going to get it right, and just be human about that.
I don't remember juggling so much as I feel like I'm juggling now.
Absolutely. But we're working longer hours. We're at screens longer hours than we were before.
Yeah.
There's a disconnect. We may start work a little later, a little earlier. We may finish a little later. It's blurred, and I think we're still finding our way. And teams are still finding their way. As more people come back to the office, is there a balance to that? Are there certain days? What's going on? There's a lot of things to still to work out. One of the things I love about the team is just that they are such a resilient bunch, and they take everything in their stride. And I have, great leadership team in the business, in Anthony, Adam, that drive great teams. They're just brilliant, and so if it gives you confidence to do that. The hardest thing I found was dipping in. Oh yeah, that's hard. It's just dipping in. And it is. I'm getting way better at it. I really am. But you've got to let them flourish and do that and take more responsibility.
No, you definitely do, and that's something. I've definitely, as my team's grown and I've stepped back.
Yeah,
I think everyone.
For the first time in a long time, I'm working with a coach. I've never done that before, and that's Cheryl. You've done it.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing is you need to work with someone who can just impartially say, okay, that's how this is what you do, and that's been a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, working with a coach is the best thing I've ever done.
Give yourself time as well. Separate that. Whether it's I was talking about this the other day quite openly. I've never played Scrabble with my wife in about 10 years. I certainly haven't in about 10 years. And we did it the other week. We finished Christmas, New Year, and we said, you haven't played Scrabble for ages. Every Saturday night now we're playing Scrabble. It sounds so simple, but it's just a distraction. It's something that's not related to work, where you can just chill out and do a few other things, and that's awesome.
And rather than loads of time, it's quality time.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's brilliant at Scrabble. She absolutely wipes the floor with it. She really does. She's a bit of a Scrabble sharp, as they would say.
Yeah, no, I'm not good at Scrabble.
No, I'm not either. I'm numbers girl. Can't do words.
But it is. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because we've seen so much technology. Where, dare I say, are we overusing technology? Because there's day in, day out, we've got it in front of us on our desk. We're sitting at the table. It's in front of us. We just need to give ourselves a bit of a break from it sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I do try to shut the laptop down, and that's it. Shutting the laptop down is my getting in the car and driving home type thing. But then I'm like, I need to do something. I'll be so much easier on the laptop. And then I'm like, but I don't want to get the laptop out, because if I get it out, I'm going to start working.
Everything else.
Yeah.
It's that trigger, that switch off trigger.
Very much.
Just a quick shout out to our sponsors at Xero, who are, I believe, the best accounting software out there for small business owners. Xero take your security really seriously, and with 2-factor authentication, you can rest easy knowing that your data is secure and safe.
So, obviously, you have a very, I don't know whether ethical is the right word for this, but you do have a very ethical way of working, and it's very customer-led, eccentric, and wanting to do the right thing, whether that's a good or bad outcome. It's always do the right thing. Have you had kind of failures along the way that has led you to working in the way that you do?
Oh, many. You learn most of the, I think this is most of the thing that we've ever done. Most of my training has always been on the job. There hasn't been any kind of formal training. Yes, I've done sales courses, but most of my early days were on the job training, OTJ, and to me there's nothing that beats that. If you've got someone who is, just hungry, they've got the right work ethic. I've always felt you can teach product. You can show them you can show someone how to do that by rote. But what you can't do is instill that level of curiosity. Some people are naturally just really good at conversation. They're natural empaths. They open conversations up, and it isn't for everybody. And sales isn't for everybody. But I'm so grateful for the mistakes I've made in terms of calls. Horrendous calls. Usual stuff of database problems, really, bringing people that are sadly no longer on this earth because databases haven't been updated, and had family members crying at the other end of the phone because a record hadn't been updated. So we've made mistakes. I've rang wrong people. Lots and lots of little things like that. But you learn. I think you build resilience to that, and that was one of the things I was always grateful for. That someone just said, "Look, there's a phone. There's a phone directory. This is what we do as a company. You understand that? Yeah, great. Go away. Start ringing people. Here's an outline of a call script, but make it your own." And that was the way I learned. And it's awkward. You're out your comfort zone. But I was stretched, and I think that's the one thing I've never been frightened of, is being stretched. So I actually look at targets and get quite excited by targets. But equally, you have to be realistic about those. There's no point in setting a target that's completely unrealistic and unachievable. You want targets to stretch both yourself and organisations, but you don't want an unrealistic target. Otherwise, you just end up in a spiral of demotivation. So I'm very pragmatic about that. One of the things I learned at a very early age as well was try not to be a people pleaser. I think it's very naturally easy to slip into that. And again, when you move into leadership, it's very easy to slip into people pleasing mode because we want people to like us and all of that. And I still like it when people like me, but at the end of the day, I'm there to perform a function for them and to help motivate them to do that. But it is interesting that you can often go, yeah, that target's really easy, and then it's not, and you laid yourself in. But I think I was one of those people that always could, we probably call them rock stars and superstars, that if someone needed a big number, they could always rely on you to pull a big number in out of the hat. But there's always that off chance that it won't happen. And I do remember a long time ago, I was known as someone who would leave it until the last minute to bring that big deal in, land it and get it in, partly because I used to love the adulation that you would get from walking in with your shoulders back and your chest out saying, "Look at me." But then that stuff's very quickly kicked out of you by a good manager. And I've worked with some amazing managers who really shaped that. And, one of the best ones I've ever worked with was Gary Turner. He was an amazing boss and mentor at Xero, and Jeff Baker, who I have at Fathom now, is a great boss as well. Those are two people that really want to shape the way I want to lead.
That's good. And what was it about them that made them those mentors and inspiration for you?
I think one is just the simplicity of what they do. There was no complicated process with Gary. Gary just very clearly laid out his vision, what he wanted, what we needed to achieve, and let you get on with that and trusted you to deliver. And where you weren't, he would kind of pull you to one side and say, "Hey, I need a big number. Can you help me out? And this is where I think you need to focus," and away you go. So Gary was an amazing mentor and a good leader, and I'm sure you've heard that from Glenn and others who were at Xero as well. And the same with Jeff. You're employed to do a role because of your expertise and your skills and your talents, but equally they just inspire you with the way that they lead you as a team member. And if you think, "Hey, if I can do some of that with my team, then that's great."
Okay. It's always learning from those that you admire, but then also learning from those who you don't like and don't like the idea. Have you had many of those in the past as well?
I've had some terrible bosses. I've had bosses that, certainly, as you can imagine, in an engineering company, that have ruled by fear. On a Monday morning, just come in, shouting, screaming, swearing, cursing, all that kind of stuff. And it just very, very toxic. So that didn't work, but it's a great grounding. And I think that's one of the things that you try to bring into roles that you have now and to the teams that you have, is building that resilience and building that can-do attitude. That we can do this as a team, we can succeed as a team. There are going to be hard times, absolutely, but the key thing that's going to hold all this together is facing that together as a team. And sometimes those milestones will always seem out of reach, but the closer you get, you should put one foot in front of the other, and before you know it, those targets are there. It's easier said than done, I know it is, but it works. But I think you have to maintain that level of positivity, because things can spiral out of control quite quickly.
Yes, I'm very good at the spirals.
But it comes back to the thing that sometimes we have bad days. But just pick it up and crack on.
I always, if someone says something like that to me and the spiral starts going down, I kind of always just like to say, we all have bad days. We just need to accept it's a bad day, get on with the day, leave it where it is and move on, because tomorrow's a new opportunity in a different day.
Absolutely.
And I think it gets very out of control when you don't just accept it's that bad day, and it starts to build, and then you try to solve, and then and sometimes there's not even anything you need to solve, it's just a bad day, and you just
and we overthink.
I'm the queen of overthinking.
And I totally agree. I can overthink a situation equally as good as anyone else, or equally as good as anyone else. It's times when you just need to kind of step back and lift your head a little bit, and not let something or not think something's happening that isn't.
No. And I don't know about you, Darren, but I've found that since I've been working with a coach, I've had less and less of those moments. And every time I feel like I'm slipping, I feel like I've got my little Shelley hat on, and she's like, come on now, you know better.
I think for me, it was one of those moments where I've said this to a few people. I've always seen accountants who not all, but some of the accountants I've worked with who've worked with coaches, I think perform better in terms of advisory and selling advisory services. Not all, but I think there's something there, and I think they've seen their business grow in ways that have surprised other people. And how did you grow from that to that in such a short space of time? And there's others, I won't mention the names, who've been in a similar situation to you, Shell. But I've never done it. And I got to the end of last year and thought, you know what, I'm gonna talk to a coach. And I sat down, and there was this one moment that was really cathartic, and it was just like, wow. And there was almost a release of emotion that you kind of went, really? And you go, okay, that's just clarified something for me that I didn't think was there. But having just that moment to step back and talk that through, complete light bulb moment. And it's like, okay, that's the one thing I've got to focus on more than anything. If I'm going to be a better leader for my team, and that's what I want to be every day, and it's you've got to start somewhere. That's where it's going to be, and that's where we're at. And if I'm going to continue doing that and helping them, I really want to do the best job that I can do. And I think if I'm not doing that, I'm not really helping them. So I've got to, I suppose in a way, you've got to lead yourself before you can really, truly lead others.
Yeah,
I like that.
And that was the thing for me that did it.
To lead yourself is almost, showing that you lead by example. You practice what you preach. You wouldn't ask anyone else to do anything that you're not prepared to do. Yeah. Because I bet you experience quite a lot of that sort of thing in the engineering company. A lot of people saying things that they would never do and asking someone to do something that they would never do themselves. And
there's tons of that. And I think there was always that attitude of asking someone to do it. And the first thing I really look at is if it's something's not happened or we haven't achieved it, is I ask myself the question, did I make the instruction explicitly clear?
Mm.
If someone hasn't done something, I'm not going to blame them. I think the thing for me is I've got to look at myself and say, did I make it really clear? Why? If they're not sure, I should have made sure that they understood. And that's the key thing for me. In the engineering company, no. But, early days, I would have just said, don't worry, I'll do it. And it's slipping back into, there's always a propensity to slip back into an old habit where you just go, oh yeah, I'll do it. And that's
definitely.
No, your team's not going to learn. They're not going to adapt and develop.
Yeah, I caught myself.
Yeah, did you?
Doing that the other day. I was literally, I can't remember what it was now. I think Maddie was asking me, oh, shall I ask so-and-so to do it or something? And I was just like, oh, it's fine. No, I won't do it actually. No, yes, ask.
And I think this is sometimes a thing that can happen. I think it's sometimes a generational thing. I think one of the things I love about leaders that are coming up now, younger, is they're very clear on boundaries.
Yeah.
Whereas because we're slightly older, we're not, and come on, I'll do it. It's fine. So being true to yourself around boundaries is really important. But asking yourself those questions, I've just found working with a coach and just having those light bulb moments has been great. So I love that. But lots of scary, sweary times down in the olden days.
But that's quite interesting. So because obviously, a lot of what we talked about is being very client centric, helping the clients. You like to introduce people so people can learn and grow together, and we all help each other up rather than, watching someone fail, thinking that that's to your benefit, where it's actually not at all. How have you found that as you've had to kind of remove yourself from dealing with clients and staff and things like that, not being as involved with it, if you like? So
yeah, it's a good question. I think partly is if you separate the two for a second. One is that we have a team that Cheryl will deal with on a day-to-day basis, and that's a really important relationship that should not be broken. To me, that's sacrosanct. But equally, at the end of the day, Cheryl and I also have a relationship. I think that just reinforces that relationship that Cheryl has with a team member, whether that's Jamie, Shiv, or Anthony. Doesn't matter. That relationship is paramount, and I want to develop that. My role is to help where I can. That's not to cut in, cut over, snowball into. That's just to really reinforce that. There are equally are situations when someone may prefer speaking to me as opposed to the team member. That's fine. When you're in a bigger organisation, because of people's seniority, they may find that they want to have a relationship at a similar level as opposed to a user level. So it should be there. But I'm there to support the team in that relationship, nothing more. But there may be people that the team aren't aware of where I'm, there's a three-way conversation going on here because Cheryl and I did a podcast with the ACCA, and that's going on at a slightly different level. There's nothing to do with them, but fundamentally it's to support them in that relationship. And that may be because I can ask a question in maybe a bit more of a direct way than they can. They may not feel comfortable doing that. Cheryl may not feel comfortable them asking that question, but she's okay with me because we've had a long relationship and that's been built on trust. There could be several things, but fundamentally I'm there to support them.
I think I've learned a lot from your leadership style as well when I've been going on this journey of elevating myself, I suppose, from the team and trying to take that step back. I've looked at leaders who I think are really good, and I've always thought you've had excellent leadership with your team and various different people in the industry, and it's been really interesting learning from you, and hearing more today as well has been really, really helpful for me personally. So I'm really sure it's going to help others as well. So yeah,
that's
thank
great.
you.
Every day is a school day for me.
Oh yeah,
And we don't have the answers. But yeah, we just need to remember that sometimes.
Every day is a school day.
It is hard because you do want to fill them with everything. But no, it is good. No, thank you very much for that.
And it is really hard, isn't it? Especially when you're like a growing business as well. Because I'm sure, I get it. I'm sure Cheryl gets it as well. Where clients will ring in and they go, "I want to speak to Cheryl." I'm like, well, Cheryl's doing other things, running the business, and but I can help you. No, I want to speak to Cheryl. So it must be quite hard, and it is when you're going through that growth stage to transition.
It is, but I think again, resilience is the thing here. I think what I've always grown up and was taught is that a customer is the business's customer.
Mm-hmm.
At that level, the relationship is at the individual level.
Yeah.
And I think that's yes, Pink Pig is a customer of Fathom, but the relationship is at the individual level.
Mm-hmm.
And so the customer is Fathom's customer. It doesn't matter who deals with Pink Pig. We should all speak to you in the same way. We should all be as courteous as each other. You shouldn't notice any different whether you go to the UK team or the US team or the Australian team. You should get that level of service. The difference is if Cheryl wants to have, we have that relationship, and I was at Xero and then I moved to Fathom, I should be able to take my relationship with Cheryl to the next role, to the next company, and move on, because there's a trust there. And that to me is the way I've always looked at it. I don't think we can be precious about that, and I think we can't be protective over that. If the relationship is good, it will outlast a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely. And I still speak to a lot of people where I've built a relationship with them at one company, and even though some of them I don't work with them now, but we still have that relationship, and depending on where they go in the future, I may work with them again at another point. But it's the fact that we've got that relationship, as you said, and that trust. And
absolutely.
No, love it. Cool. Well, we're going to finish up then with our last question.
Okay.
And it's completely off the wall. So if you wasn't at Fathom leading your team, what would be your dream role? What else would you want to do?
So you may have asked me this before. I always wanted to be a jet pilot when I was at school, but I fundamentally couldn't do that because I'm colourblind. So I have a slight problem if I was providing close air support to people on the ground. I have a problem with greens and browns. So yeah, I couldn't.
Yeah, a bit of a problem.
Yeah, where are they? And what do people wear on the ground? They generally wear camouflage, which I can't see. So yeah, I wouldn't be very good. So I was suggested that by a very astute careers officer that said, "Oh, you can become a gardener in the RAF." And I said, "No chance am I joining the RAF to become a gardener." So, thanks very much. Left it there and went on, and that was it. But that would be my dream job, is to be a pilot.
No.
Maybe one day.
One day.
Just not in the military. Maybe I should follow Bobby Lane's trick and get my private pilot's license.
That's something you can do. Definitely.
Why not?
Maybe there's a goal. There you go.
There you
Expensive goal, but it's still a goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure chatting and learning from you as always.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
If you did, please like and subscribe, and we'd also love to hear your feedback, so please leave us a review or drop us a DM on our Insta @FountainLife Podcast.
See you in the next episode.